Call to order the meeting of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers for May 12, 2016. All managers are present except Manager Shackleton. Is there any member of the public who wishes to bring something to the board? I see no hands. We're at approval of the agenda. I understand that there has to be at least one addition to the agenda for a permit. It's an after-the-fact permit. The number is 16-046. We'll add it at 9.2. Mr.
Madam
Robbins.
Chair, I think, Catherine, that the number is 258?
237.
237. 16237.
I'm sorry, I was reading the resolution number. 16237.
237.
Thank
And
you.
do you want that at
9.2.
92?
I'm sorry. Perhaps it doesn't need to be there. Do you have a suggestion?
No, that's great.
Move approval.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. On the consent agenda this evening, we have the minutes of the April 28th board meeting, Resolution 16-045, Government Relations Consulting Agreement. Is there a motion to approve? There's a motion from Manager Shackleton. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. President's report, I attended a meeting last week out at 6 Mile Creek Sub-Watershed in Victoria. That was the kickoff meeting for the Policy Advisory Committee and Technical Advisory Committee. Manager Olson was there with me as well, staff were represented, and district engineer. From the members of the committee, there was a combined, as I say, PAC and TAC. There were elected officials and staff from 3 cities, the township, Three Rivers Park District, Soil and Water Conservation District, so it was really a good representation there. I would say it was a very positive meeting. There was from positive to ecstatic, with one person being a little nervous about the scope of it and whether we could accomplish it. But I'm giving the statistical report, and I'm going to turn to Manager Olson for the color commentary.
I may have been nervous, but I got over it.
Okay.
No, it was a tremendous meeting. The presentations that were done by James Whisker and Anna Brown were very clear, and it showed the opportunity that the 6 Mile Creek program would offer to folks who live in that area. And they also left the slides and the presentation with the city engineer, and she took it to the Monday city council meeting and presented it as if she were one of our staff. And then had a chance to talk to the mayor and all the council members afterward, and everybody is in full support of the program. They just were thrilled when she presented the Reach 20 project. She and our planner, out in Victoria, took a hike on the Reach 20 boardwalk and snapped a whole bunch of pictures that were added to that presentation. And when she's showing the city's land that they have, that is wetland, that is inaccessible at this point, and then shows what can happen when the watershed's involved, they were just very pleased with the fact that we're teaming together and working as a group. So our approach to that multi-layered involvement with county, city, builders, the private sector, is very effective and very persuasive, and we have a lot of universal support.
And the staff, you're right, did an excellent job. It was a very good meeting. Manager Miller, report from Planning and Policy Committee.
The minutes aren't ready yet. We finished about 15 minutes ago. All the members of the committee were there, plus Manager Becker and Chairman or President White. And the agenda is before you. We had a robust discussion on all those issues, and when the minutes will come with the next package.
Thank you. CAC report, Manager Rodness.
Yes, I went to that meeting, and there were some pretty interesting reports given by various members of the committee that kind of demonstrated their touch with various aspects of the watershed. And, you know, some of them are, you know, members of Diamond Lake CAC, and another one, or two others were part of the Bass Lake supporters or whatever, and it was just kind of interesting. They kind of went around the room and they talked about various things that were a part of their particular purview. And so I felt really good about the CAC. I think they're doing a good job. I talked with them a little bit about in the future involving more of them in meeting with legislators and state senators, and they seemed willing to take something like that on as well. So they expressed some interest in the upcoming budget setting activity and wanting to wade in on some of those issues, and also they expressed interest in knowing more about 6 Mile and getting out there, you know, on a bus or having some kind of a tour. And we didn't open it up to our tour of them being involved in that, but I think they would really very much like to have that.
And they're not invited?
No, this will be a really, you know, small, tight spaces we're going in and out of, and so we're going to just have a small bus.
Okay.
It's going to be, I think, a challenge to see everything we want to see in a short enough time as is, so we chose not to.
Well,
But I assume there'll be a tour in the fall, as there has been before.
thank you.
Manager
Could,
Munger.
could we respond to that request then, is to have a separate tour for the CAC?
In the 6 Mile?
Yeah.
You know, I would say it's premature. That'd be my single
Okay.
opinion, because we're looking, you know, most of the tours have been completed projects, and let me give it some
Are
thought.
they?
Let me give it some thought, but I'd had some conversation with staff, and there'll certainly be a tour in the fall, and let's look at whether there's something we can incorporate from 6 Mile.
Okay.
Give it some thought.
Yeah, we left it open. They talked very favorably about a June 8th Echo Fun Fest / plant sale. I don't know if you're aware of that event, but that's coming up 3 p.m. At Minnetonka City Hall. It's June 8th.
Manager Rognitz gets a 2% of everything sold that day.
Yeah. Just a short commercial. It's one of those things where they generate about 11,000 pots of things that you can buy out there, from bushes to trees to whatever, geraniums, and it's kind of interesting. So that's about what we talked about. Upcoming events that we would be planning for their attention, and the next 2 or 3 months seem to be kind of full. So.
Thank you. Manager Olson?
Do we have a misprint on the dates of our CAC and board workshop? I believe that's for the 7th and 8th of June, not the 8th and 9th of June.
I'm not looking at the calendar. That makes it a Wednesday, Thursday, 7, 8.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Can we correct that?
The 8th and into the Wednesday.
Thank you.
So the date should be CAC on the 7th and.
Right.
No, the 8th.
No, the 8th is the Wednesday.
The 8th is
It says
Wednesday.
8th on the printed agenda I have here.
The 9th is Thursday.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry.
You got the right one?
Got the wrong year.
Oh.
You're planning ahead.
I'm in 17, sorry.
Okay, so we're correct as printed?
Yeah,
Great. Good try at confusing us. I like
came close.
I'm so confused.
that. Were there any other meetings or events managers attended that they'd like to report on? Manager Seckelton?
I don't have a meeting or an event. I guess I'm not quite sure where else to put this on the agenda. I just wanted to clear my head, and we have a wetland back here, and I just kind of stepped off of the blacktop, the bituminous blacktop, and saw a rusting chemical drum kind of half sticking out of the dirt, and a bunch of concrete broken up back there, and just kind of, and according to the county parcel map, that looks like our land.
It is.
And I guess I'd kind of like to have an inventory of what's sticking out of our dirt and what we could do to maybe address that.
Talking about airing dirty laundry in public.
I think I saw garlic mustard back there too.
I mean, legitimately, I was kind of more concerned about the rusting metal drum that was sticking out of the dirt. That was the buckthorn, which I saw. It was very nice to see the mud hen that was back there. Both he and
Was it
she.
alive?
There were two of them, and he and she both looked happy.
Almost
And
glowing.
Mr. Erdahl, what can you tell us about our land?
I haven't walked too far into the back of the parking lot. I do park back there. I didn't see the drum or other things. We can look into it.
it's on the west side. Thank you.
That was an event, I think. We have, of course, the upcoming meeting and event schedule listed, and the dates are presumably correct. We'll move to item 9.1, permit 15-569. Ms. Quinn.
Okay. All right, good evening, President White, Board of Managers. Tonight I'm bringing forth permit 15569 before you for determination at the request of the public. Granite Hearst Properties has applied for a district erosion control and stormwater management permit for the redevelopment of a multifamily residential unit located on a 0.12 acre lot at 5605 Nicollet Avenue in Minneapolis. So tonight I'll walk you through where the project's located, the details, and how the applicant is proposing to satisfy the erosion control and stormwater management requirements. So this is where the project is located. It is in Minneapolis, so it is north of Highway 62 and west of 35W. It ultimately drains to Diamond Lake within the Minnehaha Creek subwatershed. It's an area of the current existing conditions, so it is a vacant lot. There's a small concrete slab to the east, adjacent to the alley. It's approximately about 430 square feet of impervious. So Granite Hearst Properties is proposing a 6-unit multifamily residential building that will result in 0.07 acres or approximately 3,000 square feet increase in impervious surface on the 0.12 acres site. To satisfy the erosion control requirements, the applicant has provided the location of a silt fence. Rock construction entrance has identified that concrete washout will happen either off-site or contained on a truck, and has provided a final stabilization plan with sod. And those meet the requirements of the rule. For their stormwater management plan, a redevelopment on a site less than an acre is required to incorporate a best management practice, but is not required to meet the district's rate, volume, or phosphorus control standards. So what they're proposing, as you can see in yellow, are two drainage swales that will capture the roof runoff and ultimately drain west towards Nicollet Avenue. In addition to the drainage swales, they have also proposed to remove the concrete slab that's adjacent to the alley and replace that with sod. That area currently drains to the alley and will continue to do so, but they are taking up the impervious surface there. So as the drainage swales are proposed, they meet the requirements for the standards for best management practice and fulfill the requirements of the stormwater management rule. In summary, the project satisfies the district's erosion control and stormwater management requirements. As I mentioned, this is being brought to you at the request of the public. During the public notice period, staff received 4 phone inquiries about the project and 2 written requests for a public hearing. Inquiries consisted questions regarding where stormwater drainage would go, specifically either to adjacent properties or increased drainage to the alley. In addition to stormwater inquiries, there were several requests that are out of the purview of the district, including increase in traffic, lack of parking, tree removal, and the proposed building height. And so that's why this is being brought for you tonight for determination. Staff recommends approval of the project contingent of the submittal of a recorded declaration for stormwater best management practices.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Shall I have opened a public hearing?
Madam Chair and Managers, it's not a hearing, it's just a presentation of a permit matter before the Board of Managers. I'll add briefly to Heidi's very solid presentation, but that one of the 2 requests was resolved.
Correct, I forgot to mention that. So staff was able to meet with 2 members of the public, one who had submitted the written request. As a result of that, we were able to answer their questions and concerns, resulting in retractment of the request for a public hearing. However, staff was unsuccessful with attempts to meet with the second party's request, and that's why there's still a standing request.
So, given that, Madam Chair, I don't know that the applicant is here, do we?
We have the architect is present.
So, if the applicant had any additions, that would be a fine thing to put on the record, and if there were any members of the public who wanted to ask questions, that would also be a fine thing. It's not, however, a hearing.
Understood. Did you wish to add additional comments to Ms. Quinn's presentation? Sure. Come forward, there's a microphone for you. And is there any member of the public who wishes to speak to this permit? No hands.
Well, I just wanted to...
I'm sorry, would you give us your name and address?
Yes, I was going to do that.
Okay.
My name is William Wells. I am the project architect. I'm representing Granite Hearth Properties. They're just not able to be here tonight, but wanted me to speak on their behalf. This project has been approved by the City of Minneapolis. It's gone through zoning and plan review, and it has actually has a full permit from the City of Minneapolis right now. But we haven't started construction because we wanted to come here first. The property owner and I are very open-minded to any suggestions you have about water management and how to make the project better and work well for the neighborhood and the neighbors. Presently, the project doesn't have any downspouts on the roof. There's no gutters and no downspouts. I could add that to the project and move more water towards the alley. If you look at that diagram, all of it's moving to the front. We could change that and move half the water to the back, to the alley, by adding downspouts and gutters. So that's just one question that I had for the board or the public, if any of the neighbors are here, what they think about that.
Thank you. Before we go into discussion, is there a motion to approve permit 15-0569?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions, Manager Blixt?
I'm just wondering if you're going to remove the current pavement or asphalt pad and replace it with sod, then where are people going to park?
You know, that's a good question.
Isn't it in our preview?
Well, it is in that part of the mediation is to remove the pad, to
Manager
provide.
Blix, so it's my understanding, I have had contact with the City of Minneapolis staff and working with actually the members of the public were aware. So the initial plans that we received did propose parking stalls where the grass area is in the back, adjacent to the alley. However, the applicant would be required to get a variance from the City of Minneapolis to proceed with that, so at this time they're holding off on those plans.
Another question?
So, just,
Go ahead.
I mean, is it possible that the grass then eventually may get used for parking? And so then our permit would not be met, requirements?
So since the site is under an acre in size, the treatment scope for the best management practices would not change if the impervious surface were to increase.
I don't know what you just said.
So on a site that is less than an acre in size, our rule states that best management practices are required, but they're not required to treat for phosphorus rate and volume control, and that doesn't change with the amount of impervious surface. It's just it depends on the acre size of the lot.
So you're saying that it doesn't meet the minimum
Right.
requirements that we would demand them to do additional treatment?
Yes. So if the site was over an acre, then that's when the change in percentage of impervious surface would come into play.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Manager Circleton.
Well, the only point on the parking is the city is doing away with parking requirements. I don't know how that's gonna work in the long run, but,
Me neither.
that's not our issue. So.
No.
Manager Circleton.
So, I'm sorry, I just wanted a little clarity. You said phosphorus rate and volume. Three separate things? So paving over the entire site would be needs of our permit.
If they were to pave the entire site, they would be required to incorporate best management practices, but not required to treat for the volume rate and phosphorus control.
And if what triggers the distinction between the entire site versus a ratio of the site?
So the rule is triggered because it is a redevelopment of a multifamily home or residential unit. Can you repeat your question again?
Sorry. So this development is going to be phased out, correct?
The parking's been phased out.
In theory. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking on your name. That's
My
correct.
name is William. Yeah.
Sure. So,
Yes.
okay. And if they maintain the garage or maintain the cement pad, if they maintain the cement pad, and at what point would, like, how much of that parcel could they pave over before our rules?
100%.
So they could, well, she just said that if, the question I just asked was, if they paved over the entire parcel, that would actually trigger our rules, and I'm asking how much.
But our rules don't apply here because it's less than an acre.
Well, let's let Ms. Quinn answer, or Mr. Welch. I see a hand over there.
I defer to staff. If you need
Yeah.
help, let me know.
Okay. President White, Board of Managers, Manager Shackleton. So I just want to be clear that I'm understanding your question. You're asking if on this 0.12 acres site, if they were proposing to pave the entire lot, the way our stormwater rule is written, it would still be considered redevelopment because of the existing concrete slab, and they would be required to incorporate best management practices, but they still would not be required to treat to the standard of the phosphorus rate and volume control. It's definitely something we would try to influence, but through peer regulation alone, we wouldn't have any.
So by phasing it out, they don't circumvent a ratio or something, okay.
Mr.
I
Welch.
understand the question. I'm afraid maybe I missed the phasing out part of it.
Well-
The phasing out the parking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part, if you came in on a particular site and you said, oh, we're doing only this little bit, and we said, oh, that's under our requirement, and then you came back later and said, we're just doing another little bit, we would analyze it
Oh, I see what you're saying.
comprehensively.
Yeah, which
It
stage?
does add up, but this site is small enough to where the project, under pretty much any circumstances, if they do a BMP, they meet the standard. So the district requirement for small sites is do a BMP. You have to do something to treat stormwater.
Sure.
And that's what they're doing this with the swales. If they paved the whole site, they'd have to do something underground, but they'd have to do something, as he's saying.
I think it's also important to keep in mind that the city of Minneapolis would never let us do that.
They have
They-
hardcover
they,
requirements.
That was just an abstract question, because I was trying to get to the phasing and what the, like, I'm not suggesting that you have any intention to pave over the entire site, to be clear.
Are there other questions, or are we ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Mr. Wells, thank you for coming. Thank you very much, Ms. Quinn. Item 9.2, permit 16-237. Ms. Quinn, the agenda says 15 on this permit. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
It arose
If you
in
want
that year.
clarification, but the property changed hands, and so the applicant did reapply.
Thank you.
Let's get the presentation up. President White, Board of Managers. Permit 16237 is a permit for the City of Minnetonka to replace 2 existing culverts underneath Oakland Road, which triggers the district's water body crossings and structures rule. This permit is before the board as an after-the-fact permit as a result of the failed culvert interrupting vehicle passage on a highly traveled road, and the city has initiated repairs after submitting as much pertinent information available for a water body crossings and structures application. So I'll go over the project location, project details, how they propose to meet the rule, and staff's recommendation. The project's located on Oakland Road within the city of Minnetonka, within the Minnehaha Creek subwatershed. There's a zoomed out aerial, and currently these 2 culverts convey drainage for the Meadow Park wetland complex. As you can see from the plan submitted by the applicant, currently there are 2 existing culverts, one 15-inch in diameter, 78-foot long corrugated metal pipe, and one 36-inch, 80-foot long corrugated metal pipe. These pipes are parallel and offset. The pipe failure resulted in a 24-inch hole in the road. The road had been temporarily patched, but was starting to sink again. So these pictures are as recent as this week. The pipes will be replaced in like and in kind in elevation, length, and diameter. The city will use biologs as erosion control and will stabilize disturbed soils using seedings and live plantings. However, the pipes will be changed in material from corrugated metal pipe to reinforced concrete pipe. And so that would warrant a hydraulic analysis to be performed to ensure that the 100-year flood level doesn't increase in the downstream wetland. The city could not produce that hydraulic analysis in time before starting the work, and so staff finds that this can be provided after construction. And if it is found that there is an increase in 1/10 of a foot of 100-year flood elevation, then appropriate flood control or flow control measures can be implemented at the outlet. And that is listed as a stipulation of the permit as well. The project has not been formally noticed.
alternative notice for the work has been met in the form of a roadwork signage, providing notice of the construction start date. The approval of this after-the-fact permit incorporates a variance from the notice provision of the procedural requirements rule. The emergency nature of the work and the need to respond to the threat of public safety constitutes a hardship that drives the need for this variance, which staff recommends approval for.
Before questions, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions of Ms. Sylvia, Ms. Manager Olson?
When they talked about the flow rate of the new structure, is that a single concrete, reinforced concrete culvert? You're replacing two pipes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be just one opening?
So it'll be the two openings of the two existing culverts. Is that?
You're going to have two reinforced concrete openings?
Yes.
Offset.
So there is currently,
Mr. Meehan?
Keep going, Catherine, keep going.
so there are currently two pipes. One is 15-inch and one is 36-inch, and they'll both be replaced.
So there'll be two separate channels for the water to flow in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And the amount of flow, which is what that concern was based on, is that based on when the pipes were in good condition or the restricted flow that they're incurring now?
The concern for the modeling isn't necessarily the condition of the pipe. It's more that the material of the pipe, currently the corrugated metal, provides a certain amount of friction that limits the rate at which the water flows through the pipe. And so the reinforced concrete is smoother and theoretically allows water to travel faster.
Okay.
And so that's where we would need the hydraulic analysis for. Now that difference is very minor, but still for our rules, we'd like to see that modeled.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Mr. Welsh?
Not a chair, but just a question, Madam Chair and Manager Olson, but just to sort of piggyback on Catherine, who won't toot her own horn, but did put this together in the last 23 hours or something, so it's been to accommodate the need to eliminate this hole in the road. But the hydraulic analysis, obviously, for a water body crossing is a pretty critical element. And the reason here that it is not a thing that has been required by staff in advance is that the change is pretty minor and, more important, can be mitigated after the fact,
yes,
as Catherine pointed out.
Yes.
Sure.
So it is a critical element, and you clearly picked up on that, but it is, because it is an in-kind replacement, it doesn't have the kind of gravity where we would say that's not ready to go to the board yet.
One other question. Why two pipes? Why not a single pipe?
President White, Manager Olson, managers, the city is just looking to replace existing conditions. I think if they would come down to a single pipe, I think the question of change in flow, like you brought up, for needing to analyze, how it would change either flood stage upstream or downstream, but that would definitely need to be evaluated closer. So this is definitely the most low impact option available.
As long as they're willing to do it.
Yep.
Are you ready, Manager Shackleton?
Well, I guess I just was curious about, is that for backup capacity with that high flow?
Mr. Meehan?
Manager White, Manager Shackleton, it's an overflow, so the 36-inch pipe is lower, 15 inches higher. As you can see, the wetland there, the road is actually pretty low, so it limits the road overtopping potential, so it provides that, so that's why it's offset a little bit, so.
Thank you. Good.
I understand how, is it easier to recalibrate with concrete as opposed to corrugated metal?
It's a durability. This is something we're seeing more common with corrugated metal pipes, is they start to deteriorate in the bottom because they'll rust out, and then the pipes begin to get smushed over time.
Got it. I'll incorporate that into my vocabulary.
And
We call it the cake factor.
Madam Chair, the applicant is represented by a stranger to the Board of Managers here tonight.
The glasses did not fool me. Mr. Dietrich, did you want to add anything before we vote?
If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them, President White. But really, the city is interested in setting up a transparent process for emergency work. It's come to my attention that this has not always been brought before the board, and in an effort to be more transparent in these emergency conditions, we'd like to notify the district as much as possible and try to set up a process moving forward so that everyone's on the same page when we have more of these road failures.
Thank you very much. Did you have a question, Manager Blixt?
I do. I'm just wondering why this doesn't trigger the requirement, to meet the requirement for animal crossings.
So it does provide the offset culvert. The culvert's being offset, I think, which is a way to meet that requirement. That is part of the design, is to have the offset culverts, which is one of the requirements for allowing that passage.
So in other words, the smaller culvert is supposed to accommodate
Small, but, oh, you mean overlay, I mean.
very small deer, or?
The road itself is not changing, and so the same passage that was available, along the bank and across the road would still be, is still possible.
Right, and so but the idea of having this in our rules was to avoid having the animals having to go across the road. It was to allow them to not get hit by cars. That was kind of the goal, was to keep them out of the harm's way of large metal objects.
Mr. Meehan?
Manager White, Manager Blixt. 15 inches is, we're seeing that as a typical design for allowing animal passage. A lot of the municipalities are going from 12-inch pipes to 15-inch pipes. They've figured out that they get clogged enough. The other part of this, of having the animal passage is, they do have a way to work through the situation, and by replacing in kind, they're trying to ensure that that offset allows them to still go through given the current animals that would be sitting right here. So by putting an additional pipe in there, we would still have concerns of having downstream impacts associated with that. So we're trying to maintain that hydraulic capacity as best we can by putting in that passage.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand. So the smaller pipe, though, is also for water, right?
It is during high flows.
Only during high flows?
Yes. So it's
So
higher than the, it's higher than the 36.
It's raised above the normal high water line?
Yep.
And so then how would the animals access it if it's perched high?
They would crawl
Up the embankment.
They have strong legs.
They have to leap, or?
I don't know that they have to. It's on the bank. Yeah, it's on the bank. So it's right, it's adjacent to the 36.
It's marked raccoon crossing.
There's no wildlife in that.
I just want to make sure that we're meeting the goal of the rule.
Yeah.
You're assuring me we are?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
Are we ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 10.2, resolution authorization of funds to continue Lake Minnetonka zebra mussel study. Mr. Fieldsack.
Thank you, President White, managers. I first wanted to kind of bring you up to speed on some of the, I guess you could say, short-term impacts and changes we're seeing from this study since it began. So for calls, mussels were first found in Lake Minnetonka in 2010. In 2011, the district, working with Steve McCombs Blue Water Science, developed a study essentially to track the population and monitor change that's occurring in the lake from zebra mussels. We're finding Minnetonka is even more unique for this type of study than we even initially thought. With its varied water quality conditions, they all play quite a part in how zebra mussels act. To do this, so far, we've been using these sampler plates, which I think you've seen before. We have
they're usually attached to buoys out in the lake. We check them monthly, and then we check another one at the end of the season to get our counts. One of the things we're interested in this year is actually for the first time going in and doing scuba surveys, actually estimating the adult Z mussel densities in the bottom of the lake. So that's really the cumulative population, whereas with these plates we're getting kind of a annual population that's produced each year. And we want to do that for a couple of reasons. One is we'd like to get a better idea of the actual population in the lake and how that data correlates to what we're finding on our plate samplers. It will further prove our methods, which will help in a research paper. It'll also give us biomass of zebra mussels, which is important to know. As we see changes in the lake, it's important to know kind of what the actual biomass or population of zebra mussels is needed to kind of make these changes, which will be helpful in the future as control efforts are found. And another thing with the population assessments we'll be looking at is kind of the distribution of population by depth in the lake, as well as the distribution on aquatic plants. And then some of the other parameters we've been monitoring are zebra mussel veligers, which is the microscopic larvae that they put out. We collect water quality data every year through our ongoing monitoring of lakes across the district. That's total phosphorus, chlorophyll, clarity. We've also been looking at the plankton community and the algae community in the lake, because those are two things that zebra mussels have been known to provide change in. So this map kind of shows how we've grouped the lake, and it's a way just to make better sense of the data. The colored dots represent similar areas of kind of optimum food levels for zebra mussels. The red dots tend to be more eastern bays of Minnetonka, tend to be clear, have really good algae, good food source. The zebra mussels prefer. The yellow dots are also good food source, but tend to have more algae. That tends to be kind of more the middle of the lake. And then the green dots, the spar western bays of Minnetonka, highly eutrophic, blue-green algae dominated, not very good conditions for zebra mussels to live in. So 5 years into the infestation, this is showing kind of the average, the annual average densities in these groups. So you can see the red squares where they had kind of that optimum food availability, had the most rapid growth. And then now what we're seeing is we're finding chlorophyll, which is the measurement for algae, dictates zebra mussel growth the most, or population increase. That's their food. So they're kind of eating themselves out of home, basically, in those kind of eastern bays, those red optimal bays. So we actually saw this last year, the population start to decline in those. In the yellow, the more moderate, there's more food source there. They continue, there's a higher capacity basically for them to grow. So we can see that population continually to increase. And then we've seen pretty much a low population, kind of stagnant really in those far western bays. We just have not seen much growth and not much change in any of those bays. So I'm going to focus here on the bays where we're seeing the biggest change right now. And that's those red square bays, those eastern bays of Minnetonka. And what these two graphs are showing, one is with all the different lines, is actually a long-term trend since 2000. There's actually significant trends in increased clarity in these bays. And then if you see the red and gray lines on the water clarity group 1 bays graph, that's showing 5 years before zebra mussels and 5 years after. The red is after. So 5 years after zebra mussels, there's been a significant increase in clarity. So 1.5 meters to 2 meters approximately of change. And phosphorus, we've also seen long-term trends, significant decline of phosphorus. But looking at the before and after, specifically, you can see the decrease in phosphorus. So one of the other things we want to look at with some of the things on in front of you tonight is where the phosphorus is going. It's likely going into other means in the lake. Could be the algae production in the bottom of the lake, the benthic algae, or it could be bacteria in the lake. So we're trying to investigate and find out where the phosphorus is actually going, which has further implications on how other changes in the lake could occur from those kind of, bases of life in the lake.
Could you walk us through that gray line? What's the before? What was happening from May to September? Looks like it's going down. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I don't know enough on on phosphorus levels in Minnetonka and those days, if that's typical for phosphorus decline by July and then increase. Yeah, I really couldn't answer. We can look into that. I can talk to our water quality department and find out more information on that. But there has been a decline, at least we can say. And then same with chlorophyll. There's been a significant decrease in chlorophyll, the long-term trends. And then the before and after is the same type of thing. So really the algae, the food base for Z mussels is declining. In those we're seeing some changes in clarity in those middle bays, those yellow bays. But I just wanted to focus on those red bays. This is where the biggest change is occurring. There's been less. The other changes aren't quite as significant, but there's kind of looks like they're trending that way. So as I mentioned, with the decrease in chlorophyll, Z mussels, food sources decreasing. So what can happen is you can get a population crash and get that boom and bust cycle, like we've heard. And I have an example of that. This was this spring on Pelican Lake in Iredell County. So they got zebra mussels in 2009. They were found a year ahead of Minnetonka. They saw similar trends in chlorophyll. And then this spring, this is all zebra mussels washed up on shore. And I guess about 2 weeks later, just through wave action and such, those did kind of just end up washing back into the lake. So it really wasn't an issue in cleaning up. But this is what can happen once they reduce that chlorophyll. They'll crash. I'm sure the food source will rebound, then Z mussels will rebound, and you'll kind of get that for several years. But in front of you tonight is just authorization to continue working the study, continuing investigating the population and the changes that are occurring in the lake.
Before discussion, is there a motion to advance this resolution to the consent agenda at the board meeting? Motion from Manager Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Becker, go ahead with your question.
When you count those dendy plates, how do you discriminate between the ones on there that are dead versus the ones that are alive, or what are you really counting? It looked like they were thousands of them on those plates.
Yeah, Manager Olson, managers. They're all usually alive when they're on there.
Okay.
And what we do, if there's an overabundant number that's impossible to count, we have clear plastic grids that are the same size as those plates that we overlay, and we count a subsample of those grids, and then extrapolate. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Mr. Welch?
Madam President, managers, my thought would be on this, Eric and I touched base a little bit briefly on this, would be to, when this comes back, to have it just minor change in language, but significant legally, in as much as this would authorize the actual contracts with these 3 labs, in addition to the contract with Blue Water Sciences, as opposed to just authorizing use of the services. But the administrator would be authorized to enter in agreements.
Does that change any of the verbiage here?
It would change engage the services to authorize the administrator to enter a contract with ESA.
I move to amend. I move to amend. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Any further discussion on the major motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed, which should be recorded.
Manager Miller opposed. All right, item 10.3, Mr. Fieldseth again.
Thank you. In the 2016 work plan and budget, we identified a need for further research on Z-muscle control products. It's really stemming from the Christmas Lake Rapid Response, which we were a part of. In that response, we used 3 different products for control, really with a good lack of information. We tried to learn as much as we could as we went. But in the future, we really need data on what's the best product to use at the appropriate dose and what exposure time we need on different water temperatures. So we had budgeted $20,000 in that work plan to develop a project to work on that. We identified the U of M initially as someone to work with. Through discussions with them, they identified potential for a greater study. They were putting out a call for proposals for grant funds that are available from the AS Research Center. The projects could not be done by the Research Center. They could be supporting, but has to be done by other agencies. So we identified the USGS out of La Crosse as a group who has some of the best experience with evaluating Z-muscle control products. They've done a lot with Zequinox and did some recent trials on Minnetonka with Zequinox. So through those discussions, we worked with them, and they applied for grant funding through MACERC. We discussed the district's role, and we thought that the amount budgeted in the work plan, the $20,000, would really make this grant proposal more attractive for funding through the competitive funding. They are currently, they were recommended for a full proposal and are pretty close to having that all finalized. So it was kind of timely to bring this to you, even though the USGS the grant is not completely finalized yet, but to at least get board approval for when that is finalized, to be able to enter an agreement with USGS to contribute towards this work.
Is there a motion to approve or to advance to the consent agenda?
What's the funding source of the USGS grant?
Well,
So-
4 questions that I would like to get it on the table. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Manager Olson, Manager Becker, now Manager Shepherd, your question?
Well, who is the, who are they attempting to get a grant from?
Yes, Manager Shackleton, managers. So the Minnesota AS Research Center put out the call for proposals. So it's their grant funding through them. They receive the money through basically I think the Clean Water Fund. They have a larger project, and I don't know if it's a part of that that's open to these competitive grant process, but that's kind of the source.
Is their funding in jeopardy?
The Research Center?
Yeah.
No, I do not believe so.
Manager Olson?
So just so I understand it, on this, the title here, it says funding where it's $186,999. That's one number. Our $20,000 is in there. Plus this appropriated in kind. Is that an additional 141?
Manager Olson, managers, yes, that's correct. That's the additional amount put in by the USGS that they have from other sources, I suppose.
Okay.
Other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
No, wish to be recorded.
Opposed, both Miller and Shuckton? Okay, thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Item 10.4, resolution authorizing selecting consultant team. Ms. Brown.
Thank you, President White and managers. I'm here seeking authorization to select the team of LHB and Hart-Howerton for 6 Mile planning support, and also authorization to work with that team to develop a scope and contract to be approved at a subsequent board meeting. So on March 24th, I came in front of the board requesting authorization to issue a request for qualifications. We were primarily looking for a firm that could assist in sort of the
planning and landscape architecture realm. So the skills that we were looking for were in strategic planning, comp planning, regional planning, ability to develop site and area master plans, and also some knowledge and background in cross-agency collaboration and federal and state funding sources. In this arrangement, Wank will still be our primary technical consultant. So the resources that we're bringing on through this consultant are in addition to Wank continuing to help us develop some of the technical components of the 6 Mile Plan. So we received 2 responses to that RFQ that was issued, both from highly qualified teams. They were a team composed of Hoisington, Kogler, and Loam, and then also Hart-Howerton and LHB. Both teams were brought in for interviews, and the interview panel consisted of President White, Manager Olson, Manager Rogness, myself, James Whisker, and Chris Meehan. They were asked to prepare a presentation showing their project understanding, how the team would work together and work with us, and then also provide project examples. Oh, excuse me, and Lars Erdahl was also on our interview panel. Excuse me. There were a lot of faces around the table. So both teams did a really excellent job. It was a really hard decision, but we did ultimately unanimously select LHB and Hart-Howerton. I think overall we felt that they would really round out the skills that we have in-house, and they bring a lot of creativity, a lot of energy, and just a really deep project understanding. It's a really unique team composed of both local planners and landscape architects, as well as some that are work nationally and are nationally renowned. And we felt that they really understood how to make sure that the outputs of this process were not just going to be a sit on the shelf plan, that they would really tie into developing a marketable plan that we can use to secure additional external funding sources, and also that the process and the plan are about really shifting mindsets and values out here so that we can, after the planning process is through, continue to work together with our partners out there. And they also just brought up really compelling examples of past projects and visual examples. So if the board concurs on selecting them as our consultant team, I'll be working with them over the next 2 weeks, and we'll bring the scope and budget contract back in front of the board at our next meeting. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the process or on the team.
Move forward.
And that is a motion to act this evening. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Blixt?
I don't feel like I can support this just because I haven't seen what they proposed. You didn't, all I have is the resolution, so you didn't give us anything for me to look at about the team, what they're planning on doing. I have nothing to make a decision, to base my decision on.
Sure.
So I don't feel like I can support this because I know nothing at this point.
Okay, I understand, Manager Blixt. I can provide that to you following the meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Erdahl?
Just as a follow-up to that, as part of the RFQ process, the board did authorize staff to review and interview the applicants, and including 3 managers that were part of that process. So that was part of the responsibility that I think was delegated to the staff, but we can certainly provide that additional information if that would be helpful.
Manager Shackleton?
I actually think it's a fair point. I think it's one thing to delegate the responsibility to do the legwork, but ultimately we have to make a decision based on something, and there really is there's not a lot to go with in this.
No.
Well,
there's nothing.
I beg your pardon. We all got the proposals.
No, we didn't.
Yes, we did. They were in our package.
No.
Managers,
I'm not on any committee, and I'm not a member of this selection committee, and I had them in my package delivered with the rest of it for a workshop or something.
Ms. Brown?
yes, the proposals were included at the last PPC
agenda and in the packet. So I think most managers have seen the proposals, but they weren't included in the packet for this meeting.
Okay.
So they were in the online, the electronic packet for that meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Pam didn't get a copy? Okay, all right.
No.
I knew I wasn't part of any selection committee. or
I got
anything,
Well,
but
if it was in the electronic packet, then everyone got it. But another copy will be provided.
I do think, I mean, it's hard to ask for a manager to vote on something when she's never seen it. And I think just, she's not part of that committee. And is the expectation that if you're not on a committee, you still read the agendas, or that, if the expectation is that you're not on the committee, do you do the work with that committee?
Well, the expectation is that if you're not in the committee, you got an interest, you would read the committee agenda. It's published and available online.
I would have expected people read it. I see it here in the board packet. I just went back to April 21st, but it was in a committee packet. That's true enough. Mr. Whisker, you would just come forward.
It was what? I missed something.
It was in the committee packet.
Okay.
Well, I guess the point that I would like to make, and it's obviously up to the board, if you want to lay this over and bring back the proposals, we can do that and select a consultant at the end of May and then bring to the first workshop the scope. It'll just delay bringing them on 2 weeks, so it's obviously not the end of the world. It's just not the best timeline, but I don't think anything crazy will happen. The point that I wanted to make is the full board did receive all of the proposals. They received them in the committee packets. And as part of the RFQ selection process, the assumption in the selection process was that the selection would be predominantly based on an interview. And obviously not the entire board could participate in the interview. And staff's recommendation is based largely on the interview. We received proposals and we chose to interview 2 teams based on qualifications. And you've seen the 2 qualified teams, and the recommendation is actually based on the interview, not just the proposals. So I can appreciate the fact that the proposals weren't in here, but the recommendation of staff's based on the physical interview.
We do have, I guess my point was, if we're to make a decision, it'd be good to have the proposal as part of the packet.
Sure.
So that it's not just.
I agree.
I mean, so we have as much information as is necessary to make the decision of what's in front of us. And if somebody would, everybody out here is either staff or former staff. And if perchance somebody from the public wanted to look at it, they'd actually have it. Not everybody is intelligent enough to go back onto the website and look for the right committee and pull up the correct date and pull it up on their iPads. And I mean, I don't remember, anyway, I think Pam's point is a valuable one.
There is a motion on the floor and it's been seconded.
There is.
Yep. I would call a question.
Calling the question requires a second vote, motion, and
What?
calling the question requires a second process, a second voting on the call.
Okay.
No?
You just say, I want everybody to vote.
Well, I usually say, are we ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. I am sorry that I didn't spot that it had not been in the board agenda, and I will try to pay more attention to that in the future.
Yeah, apologies for that not being included.
It is in that April 21st PPC packet. Mr. Matt, item 10.5, resolution 16-046.
Before I begin, President White, managers, please note there's a new resolution in front of you this evening. Smith Partners pointed out, I think, one very important add. Even though we will be talking the benefit plan tonight, they thought it'd be important that we talk about the budget dollar amount that corresponds or follows the Health Partners plan. So we included that in the resolution, highlighted it in yellow, as well as in the RBA. I believe with that, President White, managers, I was at the last meeting where Administrator Erdahl gave an update that this is the time of year that our health benefit plan renews. I believe at that time the board requested that we come back with a little more information. So I guess what we're going to do tonight is go over a quick overview of the plan. I believe it was also requested of the changes that have occurred from the plan since its inception, and then I guess to review the process. We asked our agent, Barents, who administers the plan for the watershed district, to join us this evening. Excuse me. However, they were not able to attend. So I guess really briefly before we get into this, it's a mid-year plan, so as to not be confusing. It starts June 1. And then it runs through the existing year into the following May 31st. Thanks, Jen. Wasn't pushing it. And so what we'll be talking about tonight actually will be taking effect shortly. And so we'll go through an overview of that. Plan history. I think the first thing to start out is in 2011, the district recognized that the trend in healthcare cost was going up oftentimes by double digits. We were looking at about 20% renewals annually, and so we decided to switch away from our traditional healthcare plan to one that was a very high deductible blend plan. And we'll get into what that means in a little bit, but the Board of Managers voted after seeing the options and seeing the layout of the plan from Barents and staff, voted to implement the plan in 2011. A few notes since then. I think what we're told, or what we were, I guess, recommended as the primary rationale for switching to the plan is to control costs as they proceed forward. Not only are staff encouraged because it's their own dollars at work to make better choices as to when and how often they go to the doctor, the district upon renewals should see lesser renewals. And I think from 2011 till current, the numbers are coming in at around 4.9% as an average, no longer in the 20s. One other note, if the board will remember, we hired as an organization Springstead to review our benefits as part of the comp and class study in 2014. And what they found is that compared to other organizations, we have a very low ratio of benefit costs toward overall budget. And even better, if you compare our benefits cost, comparatively speaking, to our salary, that is coming in well under the standard or the norm. Benefit plan renewal roles. A lot on this page, so we'll kind of synthesize this. Health Partners, Barents, and Alliance are all contracted vendors that work with us in the arena of the health plan. The one thing that is unusual to point out is we do not have contracts with any of these vendors. They operate under, obviously, the federal and state laws applicable to healthcare plans. And in the case of Barents, they are paid by the size of the plan. Alliance manages specific components. Health Partners, obviously, is the provider. But again, what is unusual is there is no contract with any of these agents. The Board of Managers historically has been involved when there's a major plan change. The last one was in 2011. They obviously, the Board of Managers approves the annual budget, and then the monthly check register. And then staff completes all the other tasks that are listed. The framework for benefit renewal would be starting in January. We work with the agent to see what's being forecasted in the industry or what we could expect. March, we actually start seeing plans. And then in May, we get a recommendation from Barents after working through those plans as to how we can control our costs and keep the best benefit available to staff. In June, the renewal takes effect. Traditionally, the renewal, if it's within budget, has been an administrative approval granted through the governance policies. If it's outside of the budget parameters we have, early in the year, we work with the Board of Managers and talk about plan modification or plan changes. And then in June, we start bringing the budget through to the Board of Managers with the benefit highlighted, the health care benefit being the biggest offering in the benefit package. And then September and December, we have the approvals of the budget line item for benefits. This is a lot of information on one slide, but it's my understanding that the board just wanted to see if the plan had changed. Staff is very happy to say since 2011, the offerings of the HSA HRA blend have stayed consistent. A couple noteworthy changes is the federal stipulations have required some modifications for prescriptions or some minor changes, but the primary offerings of the plan have stayed consistent. Describing the plan really briefly, why it's different, what a high deductible plan is. Quite frankly, it means employees pay the majority of the initial costs, which would be the bottom tier of the ladder, which is called the HSA. The middle tier of the ladder, which is called the HRA, is a district contribution, only if employees get into that. And then the top tier is the Health Partners coverage. And so if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see deductible, that would be $2,000. And if you look in the middle, there's another deductible, that would be $4,000. That would signify the difference between being a single person on the plan or having a family on the plan. The family on the plan has an increased deductible. But again, the idea behind this is if employees are spending the first tier or the first $1,300 or $2,600 for everything they do in a medical arena, they'll be more cautious going to the doctor, find other choices such as minute clinics, as well as tracking the costs closely. I guess changes to the plan, again, just highlighting the added cost for preventive medications for this year has been dropped. Other than that, the plan that has been presented and worked on by staff this evening is the same plan we have had. The financial impact to the district is coming in at 3.14%, well below the roughly 10% that was in last year's budget. And I guess with that, staff as well as Barron's management recommends that the board accept the renewal from Health Partners coming in at 3.14%.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 16046? I'll make the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, Manager Shackleton?
What would be an alternative to this?
Well, I guess staff is presented with a lot of alternatives, or when we're in presentations as what's going on in the marketplace. One thing we looked at is privatization of the healthcare plan. And when we asked Barron's to run the numbers, it was not favorable at this point in time. We also used to have a process in place called payment in lieu. And what payment in lieu was is if an employee had the ability to go to another plan, or now in the current system go to MinCare, the district would provide a monthly stipend for them to have benefits obtained elsewhere. In 2015, we received a recommendation from Barron's, Smith Partners, as well as Springstead to end that practice. I think the other option that's always available to the board is to review the cost of the plan and look at the contributions from employees. And then I think lastly is we created a high deductible plan. Those numbers could change. And so we've stayed relatively consistent within budget, staying with the $1,300 and the $2,600, and the numbers of the deductible, we could increase those. And so the more the employees or the business pays out of pocket, the cheaper the plan would be. But I think our goal historically since 2011 is to try and come in under the 10% annually and offer a plan that's attractive for retaining employees.
Manager Blixt?
I'm just wondering what the cost for the employee is to have a policy. Are they charged? In other words, are they paying anything for their policy?
President White, Manager Blix, the policy that was set up in 2011 does not have an initial buy-in by the employees. What the employees have to do is pay the deductible that is in place. And whether you're single or whether you're family, it's a different deductible, but that's their cost and their participation in the plan.
Is that true for those that cover their families as well?
Correct. Yes.
So
the deductible is higher for families as it is for a single person.
Right. So the district is paying for families and for the employees, except for the deductible.
Correct.
Can you go back to the slide with the deductibles on, please?
And so if you look at the dark blue on the bottom, on the left-hand side would be $1,300. That's what a single person would have to pay out of pocket. That is their exposure for a year. On the right-hand side would be a family. The exposure for a family would be $2,600 out of pocket per year.
Do you know what the average income is for our staff?
I don't. I could get that.
Because my supposition is $2,000 is about a month's pay.
No,
No?
you're not even close.
No?
You know, this is kind of biting the hand that feeds my grandkids, but all the job growth or the majority of job growth is in healthcare. The profits that all these so-called nonprofits are generating is just phenomenal. You go to any major city and the major buildings are going up, our hospitals. I don't know what the answer is, and I don't think we should try to figure it out here tonight. I think the staff has done a good job with the consultants of coming up with a fair proposal for everybody, including the taxpayers, that we should adopt. And I'll move approval.
There's a motion in a second.
I agree that, I agree with what you said, and I also think that, I've lost my train of thought. Oh, the comfort class study indicated that this was within a very reasonable range, and so that's convinces me as well, persuasive as well. Manager Place.
The thing that makes me uncomfortable, and speaking as a single person, is that it feels as though we are providing a lot more financing for those of folks with families. And so I'm just wondering, if I was a single person,
You'd get married.
I would say, you know what? Why is it? Why it just doesn't? It's not equitable. It's not fair. I think it's wrong. I'll just say that I think it's wrong that we are paying thousands of dollars more for people who are married and have families.
Mr. Maz and then Manager Wilson.
President White, Managers Blix, one of the things pointed out by the Springstead study focuses directly on one of the things they were asked to do. How can we retain employees? And when they looked at the costs because of us switching early to a blend high deductible plan, whether you're a single person or a family, we're well below what they found in the market. And to coin some numbers, for a single person, the market at that point in late 2014 was $514 an employee. We're coming in at $417, and for a family, it's $1,459 a month. We were coming in at $1,176. So the makeup of the plan seemed to be working very well. And then the other thing they pointed out is there's no doubt that the census has changed from the staff from 2011 to now. We've gone from a lot of single staff to married staff with children. But if one of the goals of the organization and one of the highest goals of the organization was retaining employees, that includes growing them through the years of family development, it proves that the benefit package, at least from their perspective in this study, is working.
Manager Olson, thank you. Manager Olson.
There's a lot of differences between industry and how we do medical coverage of our 22,000 employees in our company and here. One of the things that government usually supplies is a better benefit to compensate for not necessarily being the highest paid in the market. And what happens is you don't see that deduction for your teeth and for your health care on your paycheck, where we do. So that's one benefit. The thing that is also been recognized in industry is that the costs to a person making $40,000 a year are the same as the cost to someone making $100,000 a year. And so that's where your comment about fairness sometimes also is debated. And in our business, there are levels by which your income determines what you're going to be paying through that range. So those are two things that don't happen here, and are usually used when there's a sense of fairness, trying to be negotiated. So for the typical watershed employee, this is a heck of an opportunity. I really would doubt that there's people out there who have spouses that say, oh, I'm going to turn this one down because my husband or wife works at another company and they have more affordable coverage. I wouldn't see that happening at all.
Manager Miller?
Oh, my comment wasn't worth one.
Manager Jackson?
Everything I've heard is that by reducing the barriers to preventative care, you lower your overall costs. Everything I've seen was in the packet, had no discussions with staff. And the deductibles at these levels for lower level employees are going to be disincentive to go to get basic care, which according to the theory, I don't know if it's proved itself out, increases longer term costs.
So what change would you want to see?
I'm not smart enough right now to actually answer that question.
Fair enough. Manager Robbins?
I'm pissed.
Yeah, we're getting in deep weeds here.
Mr. Vance?
I hate to go here, but I will. It's history, but President White managers, that question
There's
is...
a rule, if you appear before the board very often, you know that you never listen yourself into trouble.
This is, I shouldn't say I hate to go there. What we talked about as an organization and the Board of Managers decided in 2011 would actually increase the planned cost for the organization, and that's to fund a portion, if not all, of the HSA. And when Barron's Management provided this, I believe the board from 2011 to 2013 funded a portion, if not all, of the HSA. In 2013, the organization decided that the majority of employees had the fund developed and built out, and so if that is a consideration, that's what the organization has done previously. So there was actually more of a contribution.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed?
I'm gonna say that I'm opposed.
All right, we have a 6-1.
For the record.
What's your feeling about education?
It's also hard to understand.
Item 11.1, Mr. Welch, governance policies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Managers, in your packets tonight is a very brief, especially for a lawyer, memo from Smith Partners Lewis, and that is attached to a set of governance changes that directly flow from your discussion that Lewis was in attendance at. I was not, of course, at your retreat. In the course of effecting the changes that the board directed, which you see to Governance Policy 6 for asset protection and to Policy 4 in the board district administrator relationship, Lewis noticed that the mission was not up to date, so we updated that for your approval. That mission has already been adopted by the managers. I'm glad to field questions. The significant changes are that the authority of the administrator to make expenditures and to contract for expenditures is increased to $10,000. Below $5,000, lawyers can sign a check, enter an agreement. From 5,000 to, or 5,001 to 10,000, the signature of the board president is needed.
And over 10,000, it's board actions. Okay.
Correct. And these are separate from contracting requirements, which are statutory matter. Then, with regard to the personnel management, these changes were largely made and the board reviewed almost a year ago, probably 10 months ago, and were re-reviewed at the retreat and modified slightly to retain the authority or the role of the executive committee in the hiring process and I'm glad to answer questions, but as I say, I think the discussion was fairly thorough from what I understand at the retreat, and the changes are meant to affect those. The motion we'd be looking for on this would be to adopt the revised governance policies, and flowing from that, we would integrate the amended policies into the overall governance document, and then resupply that to the managers. I believe it's on the iPads now. David left, but
And it's also on our agenda.
I think it's, yeah, and then you have a hard copy too, but.
Move approval.
Is there a second discussion or questions? Manager Buxt?
I'll just say, I'm not gonna vote to carry on my opposition of things tonight. I'm not gonna vote to support this for two reasons. One was, I voted against the mission, and so I'm still opposed to it. And then, I'm also uncomfortable, and I wasn't there for the discussions, so, I mean, I could be potentially persuaded, but I'm nervous about the idea of authorizing the administrator to just spend $10,000 without the board being involved at all, so.
Part of the discussion was, of course, that it would be co-signed,
I
and that
saw that.
and that we would always see them as they came back to us. Anything we had a question about, we could raise that question.
I saw that, but I just, I'm just, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And you could get, $10,000 chunks could get you in trouble fairly quickly, and that, so I just.
Behooves us to read those check statements at the end of the month.
Just nervous about it.
Yeah, I share the same concern. That's why from up to 10,000, up until 2 years ago, the executive director could transfer money with no approvals. Wires. In other words, you could take $19 million that at the time was in the, for various reasons, was in the budget, and send it to Switzerland. I mean, we've tightened things up pretty tight with only one checking account, no petty cash, and everything. And we have no footnotes whatsoever in our exceptions in our audit. So I think you've got legitimate concerns that everybody should have, and I think they're addressed.
Okay, well,
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
nay.
Manager Buxt opposed. Our last agenda item is the administrator's report. Mr. Erdahl.
Thank you, President White and managers. First, I'll draw attention to a little flyer, even for the benefit of the YouTube video, that creek cleanup on July 24th. You can feel free to share these at your local coffee shop, bulletin boards, and other places that you frequent. If you can distribute those around your area, that's much appreciated. We have staff kind of doing the same, and others. Just kind of an update on policies. Tonight is our first evening of having the combined committee and board meeting at the same time. And so we've done internally as staff, we've kind of reviewed and kind of reaffirmed some scheduling issues with when packets get put together. So we will continue to try to distribute those packets at the end of the day Monday for both the committee and the board meetings. And then we'll have kind of one more chance on Tuesdays to get things in if needed, if they're not ready by Monday. And anything after that Tuesday deadline then would have to be walked onto the meeting if there's anything that's kind of timely that comes up. Things like permits with collapsing roadways and things like that we weren't able to anticipate. Also, just a couple updates on, in some of this, Eric Fieldseth already talked about some of the AIS updates. Kind of a shortened version of the AIS Spotlight will be part of the OPC committee on the 26th. We also just received an update from the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board about their inspections to date, and they have had 3 zebra mussel finds on 2 sailboats and 1 fishing boat. So those were not living, they were overwintered and kind of into the lake, but they still went through the decontamination protocol. And then just yesterday, the Star Tribune had an article that kind of highlighted some things that are going on with zebra mussels, and also kind of highlighted the education requirement for the rule breakers, that they have to kind of go through an education course to learn the proper way to do it and get certification and proof of that too. So that's going forward. This weekend, the fishing opener, and also, of course, Clean Dry Drain Day. Proclamation from the governor will indicate that Sunday is Clean Dry Drain Day in the state of Minnesota. So again, there's a lot of attention for AIS issues coming around these days. For the development of the 2017 budget, staff are continuing to refine numbers and especially focusing on carry forward potential adjustments internally that can be made this year and looking at the strategic framework analysis process. And our hope is that we can bring that back to the managers for your kind of response and feedback. Again, at the committee meeting on the 26th prior to the board meeting. And we can figure out different ways to share that information with the board as a whole as needed to, but that was kind of the upcoming date that I think that staff felt we could bring together kind of a significant amount of information that would like to get your feedback on before we proceed to further develop that.
Quick question about that?
Yep.
Excuse me, I don't have a problem with going before the committee, but I think the question that Manager Blixt raised about information coming to people that are not on those committees. Yeah. How do, like, I'm not necessarily looking for an answer right now, but trying to figure out how to strike that balance between siloing versus kind of sharing something with everybody.
And after the administrator's report, I'd like to speak to that.
And I think that we can maybe look at, last year we had some combined committee meetings just for the purpose of budget hearings, so we might kind of try to formulate some of those or kind of have a budget task force. And we talked a little bit prior to your arrival at the PPC meeting today. We also talked a little bit about committee purpose and roles and responsibilities and some of those things too. So I think that's an ongoing and continuous improvement process. So, and my last thing is more of a save the date. I think that we had kind of an announcement at the last meeting about the NEMO, the Non-Point Education for Municipal Officials workshop on the water. That is now scheduled for Wednesday, the 3rd of August. The details are still to be developed, but it will probably be leaving about 5 p.m. from Allen Alma's in Mound and focus on kind of the upper west side of Lake Minnetonka. And this is in some years we've co-sponsored this event with some others. This is going to be just with the Watershed District and focusing just on some of the plan initiatives going forward for the target audience, which is of local elected officials within the district. And that's all I have.
Manager Olson?
In addition to the governor's Clean Drain Dry slogan for the fishing opener, there's a poster circulating in southern Minnesota that some of you may have seen, showing a 1950s era Johnson outboard motor, and the big name, the big title is "Clean Your Johnson," and it gets all the fishermen's attention. They talk about it, and they all get a copy of it because it's a collector item now, and they're using it to motivate people and make it aware that it's something they can work on. So.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Would that be highbrow humor?
I described it as I saw it there.
One additional flyer that's also in front of you is the Summer Mod Tour is on June 22nd to the 24th down in southeastern Minnesota. Looks like kind of a action-packed few days of tours and things. So that's something that I think some of the managers have participated in prior years.
Thank you.
Did you need some approval for, did you say, Michael?
Well, if the managers wanted to go, and I'm trying to recall if the policy has been to reimburse or to cover those fees for managers to attend this, they could come back to you at the next meeting. You still have time. If there's managers who wanted to go.
I don't think we...
the registration fees?
Well, you just put it on the per diem.
What we've done in the past is we
there
just
hasn't been a
registered through
special.
the district.
Right.
Admin registers.
Okay.
We haven't made a special appropriation.
Or authorization?
No.
Okay.
I thought we did at Stillwater.
Oh, that was for the CAC. CAC
Yeah.
Universal Wind.
That was for CIC.
Okay.
I think so, because it was above, beyond their budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. But what I wanted to say, the board can do whatever it wants, and the board will change its mind, and the board composition changes, and so going forward, whatever we want to do, packets is the one thing. But I wanted to point out that it was not an oversight. We had a lot of conversation about that. And because everyone wanted to have access to the materials going to both committees so they would know what was going on and whether they wanted to attend, we had a structure set up that would make sure that the board packets went out, or committee packets went out, and were accessible to all board members. So it wasn't an oversight, it was set up that way. And then back to our first point, whatever we want to do going forward is what we do going forward, but I wanted to put that out. We are adjourned. Thank you.